I want to talk a little bit more about this video that everybody's sending me from Anti-Fascist Dad, where he was trying to frame the 3.5% rule as a bunch of bunk and that nonviolent resistance doesn't work. I don't know. I found the whole video really disingenuous and mischaracterizing what nonviolent direct action actually is. Anybody who conflates nonviolent direct action with pacifism and makes it sound like nothing more than a march where you've got your sign and your latte, I believe is what he said. Yeah, that person is either willfully ignorant or willfully misrepresenting what nonviolent direct action, nonviolent resistance tactics are. And again, I think that creator and I agree, destruction of property is not violence. We know that in a capitalistic system and with our law enforcement that they consider it violence. Other societies don't necessarily, right? Like if you look at the French farmers who love to dump loads of poop in front of government buildings as a form of protest, or you look at other countries that have no problem smashing shit, and that is seen as a more acceptable form of expressing discontent with the actions of the government. I don't think that those things are violence. But in the United States, unfortunately, when we're looking at successful tactics, part of what we're doing, a big part of what we're doing is trying to get public opinion on our side. We're trying to get the public to sympathize with the resistance movement and to turn against the cruel, brutal, illegal actions of the government. And unfortunately, in the United States, what we see is that destruction of property tends to turn public opinion against the movement. And it actually harms the advancement of our cause when what we're trying to do is build mass public opposition. We need to be appealing to the public. Right? Different tactics have different implications and also elicit a different response in different cultures. It makes sense that in an intensely capitalistic system like the United States, where we really value property more than human life, we value profit more than human life, we value material possessions more than human life, that destruction of property would be conflated with violence. But there were so many other ways that guy and I disagreed, and I felt that he was not accurately framing nonviolent resistance. And at the end of that video, I really wanted to talk about the bigger picture that I think that he was missing, and I think a lot of people are missing. It's something I definitely think tankies are missing when they have this conversation online. Now they're all probably mad at me that I call them tankies, but folks who want a bloody, violent revolution and they're sitting, on their mom's sofa advocating for armed resistance while they're not engaging in any of the kinds of mutual aid and community care that we need to get us all through this. They just want to see all of us crushed under the tank treads because they think that that will magically manifest their communist utopia. What those folks are failing to understand, and I think was not effectively covered in Anti-Fascist Dad's video, when you talk about violent resistance, there is, as he said, there is armed violent resistance and unarmed violent resistance. And I think despite what that creator was claiming, Chenoweth and Stephan actually address those differences: armed violent resistance, unarmed violent resistance, nonviolent resistance, and the efficacy of all three. And then also the nuance that has to be had when nonviolent resistance includes some overlap with those other two. It's never so neat and tidy as you would like it to be. They address all of that, but I would like us to really think about the bigger picture. I don't know, if people want me to talk more in depth about Chenoweth and Stephan's research or some other researchers in this area, Davenport, Svensson, even Case, who Chenoweth references repeatedly. But for the purposes of this video, I actually really want to focus on the end goal. Because what we want is the restoration of democracy. What we want after you topple an authoritarian, there is now a power vacuum and something has to come next. And this is where the conversation, I think, about nonviolent resistance versus violent resistance becomes even more important. There's a really interesting report that was published in the United States Institute of Peace's Press back in 2022. It's entitled Promoting Peace and Democracy After Nonviolent Action Campaigns. One of the reasons that I'm constantly asking us to think about what kind of America we want next, what is it that we dream of? What are the good things that we want for this country? What are the reforms? Do we want to expand the Supreme Court? Do we want term limits for SCOTUS? Do we want to overturn Citizens United? What do we want? A wealth cap so that we don't have billionaires anymore? Like, what is it that we dream of? What kind of policies and protections do we want for working class Americans? What is the America that we deserve, that we can build together? Part of the reason that I ask that is because people need to plan and hope for something, right? We have to have a goal that we're reaching toward. But also, it's because we really need to think about the fact that there's more than just stopping the fascists. There's more than just toppling Donald Trump. We have to be thinking about what comes after, because if we don't, we're just like the tankies who think bloody revolution magically transition into our version of communism, which is not libertarian communism. They want authoritarian communism, without a pathway to achieving that, right? And what we see in this study from Promoting Peace and Democracy After Nonviolent Action Campaigns, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will link to the whole study. You can go read it for yourself. It's 28 pages long, so unfortunately I can't share it all here. What we want after we stop the Trump regime is the restoration of democracy, but not what we had before. We need reforms so that we no longer live under an oligarchy where the working class are so terribly exploited. And what we see from this report is that when you have an authoritarian regime that is toppled through nonviolent means, or predominantly nonviolent means, right? There can be some things set on fire. There can be some smashing of shit. There can be unarmed resistance against law enforcement, but it is predominantly through nonviolent means. The focus is on nonviolence. Not letting perfect be the enemy of good here. We are focusing on maximum efficacy, not perfection of tactics. What we see when we use nonviolent means is that far more often, what follows the authoritarian regime is the establishment of democracy. As my grandma would say, you begin as you mean to go along. When you begin with nonviolence, when you begin with a focus on solidarity, safety, community, when you organize with that mindset of, hey, we're doing this for the people, we are prioritizing the good, the safety of each other. Guess what? The data shows that it's going to be far more likely that you transition into a democracy because you have that mindset. Let me read this one section from the study because I think it helps explain what I'm trying to convey. Most mobilization during transitions after nonviolent action is peaceful and aims toward expanding the scope of political competition. However, some transitions see significant numbers of violent events, or events where organizers seek to reduce political competition or seize control of the political system for their particular political faction. History shows us that events with violence or goals that narrow the scope of political competition are typically described in the literature as maximalist. These kind of maximalist tactics, either violence or attempting to eliminate political competition, those tend to have a very negative impact on democratization in the country after toppling an authoritarian. It's really important to note here that organizers of these events that are maximalist don't actually tend to frame their actions as anti-democratic. They may even claim that violence or reductions in political competition are necessary to protect a democratic transition. Such claims are common and often characterize both campaigns leading up to transitions and civic mobilization and contention during transition periods. And unfortunately, I've seen a number of fairly mainline Democrats saying that they want punishment or elimination of Republicans in order to protect democracy after this is all over. And unfortunately, what we see from the data is that that kind of thinking and rhetoric tends to actually push the country toward non-democracy after the toppling of the authoritarian. The data here supports prior research suggesting a major negative impact on democracy from maximalism as a tactic. Maximalist events are much more common in transitions that end in authoritarian regimes. Are we just setting ourselves up to transition from one authoritarian to another? When you engage in violent resistance or eliminating political competition, those maximalist behaviors, you are nearly twice as likely to end up with another authoritarian regime at the end of it instead of a democracy. There's a negative correlation between maximalist tactics and democratization. And I think that was really missing from that creator's video. What is it that we want at the end of all of this? What is our goal? And are our tactics helping us achieve the end of a better America where we actually have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? It's always got to be eyes on the prize. What is it that we want coming out of this? And is advocating for violence really going to get us there? The data suggests no. Using violent tactics is not going to magically manifest a democracy. We need to begin as we mean to go along. Eyes on the prize, y'all. What's our end goal here? the restoration of democracy.